Mishnah is Chagiga, Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishnah Ches, Mishnah 8. Before we begin this Mishnah, we need an introduction, as brought down here in the art scroll. When Moshe received the Torah at Sinai, only the 10 Commandments were written down. Later, when Hashem commanded him to write the Torah on a scroll, only part of the Torah, part of the law revealed to him was written. The rest remained an oral tradition. Right? Torah Shebechsav, the written Torah, Torah Shebal Peh, the oral law. This included, now in the oral tradition, in the oral law, this included entire laws, as well as the numerous details of even those laws written in the Torah. Only in later generations, when it became evident that the oral tradition was starting to be forgotten, did the sages of those times permit writing down the oral law. This became the Mishnah and the Talmud and the Gemara. Now, besides those laws that are written clearly in the Torah and those that are known only through the oral tradition, there is yet another category of laws, those that are hinted to in the Torah, but so vaguely that were it not for the oral tradition about them, we would know little, if anything, of their essence. So you've got what's explicit in the Torah, you've got what is completely Torah Shebal Peh, oral tradition, and then you have the laws that are alluded to in the Torah, but alluded to in a very vague way that without Torah Shebal Peh, without the oral tradition, we really wouldn't know those laws. So these are the different categories that are going to be. So within this category, there's going to be a number of examples that the following Mishnah is going to give that fit under this category. We're not going to do the whole Mishnah today. We're going to do part of it. So the Mishnah begins. Heter Nidarim. Now, this is the translation. The release of vows, we know that if a person makes a vow, it's possible to get a heter, to get a release, either through one chacham, one sage, one great sage who is very learned, or even through 3 regular people that compose a beis din. They also would have the ability to, let's call it, to undo this vow. So heter nidarim, the release of vows, parchin ba'aver, float in the air. Ve'ein lem amasha yismeichu, and they do not have what to support themselves on in the written Torah. So we'll elaborate on that. But that's what the Mishnah is saying right now. We know there's a law of heter nidar, and we know that there's a possibility to be released by a neder, either through a sage or through a beis din, through a rabbinical court. But the basis for that in the Torah is very vague. And therefore, really, primarily, we know it based on Torah Shebal Peh, the oral tradition. So here's the explanation. A single expert or a court of 3 laymen may release a person from his vow if they can determine a circumstance, the results from which his vow, the results from his vow, which, had it been considered by the person, would have prevented him from originally making the vow. Okay, that's the mechanism, how it works. If they can figure out a way to say that would he have known this result that came out of his vow, that when he made the vow, he never would have made it, that's going to be their basis of their release. Okay, now, the scriptural allusion, there is a hint, there is an allusion in the Torah to this idea, to this concept. Why? Because when it comes to vows, the Torah gives a person, person makes a vow, there's a prohibition on not keeping the vow. That prohibition is loy yachel devari, which means he shall not profane his word. He established the word, he made a vow, where to go against it, he's profaning it, he's going against it. Now, so the Torah says, the person who made the vow, shall not profane his word. So you can deduce from that, right, he cannot profane his word, but others could profane his word. Others would be able to, so to speak, profane his word by releasing him from it. So what's the illusion here? The Torah never says anything about it. All the Torah says is, on the person who made the vow, don't go against the word. Don't profane your word. But the fact that the Torah said he should profane his word, but it didn't say other people can't profane his word, that is a allusion, a hint to the idea of the fact that there is a possibility of other people releasing him from the vow. But it doesn't say it. It's based on what's not said. Because the Torah says one thing and didn't say another thing, that's how you're deducing it. That kind of deduction would not be enough to go ahead and say that to actually say that we have such a law unless we already have a Torah Shabbat Peh and oral tradition that it exists. If we didn't have an oral tradition that such a concept, such a law exists, just based on that kind of deduction from the words wouldn't have been enough. Once we have the tradition, we can also say there is a hint to it, an allusion to it in the Torah itself. So that's what it means. Het Nedarim, releasing the vows, are floating in air and don't have they don't have what to be supported on. That means they don't have a support in the written Torah itself. But we have that law based on Torah Shabbat Peh, based on the oral law. Now, the next example are like this: Hilchos Shabbos Chagigos v'Me'ilos. The laws of Shabbos, the law of the Chagigos, the Chagiga sacrifice. If you want to know what this whole discussion is doing in this tractate, it's because of that word. It's because we're mentioning Chagiga here, and therefore they decided to put this Mishnah here in this tractate. Hilchos Shabbos, the laws of Shabbos, Chagigos, of the festival offerings, v'Hame'ilos, and the laws regarding the prohibition to use something that's been consecrated to the Beis Hamikdash. They are described as Harehem kaharorim atluyim b'sayra. They're like mounted, suspended by a hair. Shehein mikra buat. There is very few scriptural source. V'alachas merubos, but a lot of laws. So here we're going to have examples of where you've got a category where it has more basis in the written Torah, but at the end of the day, it's got a lot of laws that there would be no way of knowing them just based on the scripture. You must have Torah Shabbat Peh or a law to be able to know them. So let's start with the first example, Hilchos Shabbos. Okay, now we're saying that's called a mountain hanging by a hair because it has a lot of laws, but not a lot written in the Torah. Now, as they point out here in the notes, although the prohibition to do work on Shabbos is stated explicitly in the Torah, right? That's straight. Torah mentions many times not to do malacha. So the prohibition itself is clear. Nonetheless, there is a rule about Hilchos Shabbos, a very important rule. And it's a little complicated, but it's a very important rule. And that is, in order to be liable from the Torah for it as desecrating Shabbos through a malacha, through a forbidden form of work, the Torah said it's forbidden, it has to be considered meleches machshavas. Ever heard of that? Meleches machshavas, which they translate as, which literally means work of thought, but it means purposeful labor. It has to be purposeful. What does purposeful mean? So it can have a number of explanations. But one explanation is the following. One of these rules is that the intended purpose of the work should be that purpose which the malacha forbids. Example, if you dig a hole in the ground, what prohibition are you transgressing when you dig a hole in the ground? Bona, building. Okay? Now, if you want to consider digging a whole building, then why are you digging that hole? Because you need the hole, right? You need the hole in the ground for some purpose, and you're doing it in the ground. That's called building. But what if I dig the hole because I want the dirt? I don't want the hole. I want the dirt. So I dug a hole, right? I did the act that could be, that potentially could be considered bona building, but I didn't do it for the purpose of building. I did it because I need the dirt. So as you dig a hole, not for the purpose of what the Torah, if you do it for the purpose, other than the purpose that the Torah gave for the forbidden malacha, then according to Torah law, you're not liable. So if I dig the hole to have the hole, that's bona, that's building. If I dig the hole to have the dirt, that's not the purpose of the prohibition that the Torah forbade, and therefore, according to Torah law, it's not forbidden. According to rabbinic law, it may be forbidden, but according to Torah law, it's not forbidden. Okay? Now, where does this whole concept of melachas machshavas come from? Where does it come from? The answer is it comes from two words that don't appear by the laws of Shabbos, but actually they appear by the construction of the Mishkan, by the construction of the tabernacle. There the Torah says that the work done there is melachas machshavas, purposeful work. Now, so how does it relate to Shabbos? The answer is because we have a source in the Torah that puts together the Mishkan and Shabbos. That's the basis that what applies by the Mishkan applies by Shabbos. And therefore we know that Melechas Machsheves, purposeful work that was said by the Mishkan, applies to Shabbos. That's a mouthful, right? That's a lot there. And what's it all based on? Well, we have a prohibition in the Torah. We have the words Melechas Machsheves in the Torah. And we have some kind of a comparison between the two. We find the two are mentioned together. So we have what we could probably call more scriptural source than the example before about the release of the Nedarim, but clearly it is you've got a lot of laws. You've got this concept of Melechas Machsheves, which contains a lot of details to it, a lot of different points to it, and the only way you'd really be able to know it is again based on Torah Sheba'al Peh, based on oral tradition. So that's the first example of what the Mishnah meant, that the laws the laws of Shabbos are a mountain hanging by a hair. There is some scriptural source, but not as much to back all the laws of Shabbos that clearly need Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral tradition, in order to know them. We'll continue this tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay. Now continuing with the Chofetz Chaim. Okay. All right. Our entire discussion until now about, again, this possible permission of saying over something bad about someone that you or one of the three who someone said it in front of, and because of that, we assume it's going to get spread, it's to become well known, and because of that, there wouldn't be a prohibition to repeat it. He says that is only from the point of saying it over. It's forbidden to add one more word, meaning one more word that makes an addition. Or to really, again, to strengthen it about what's being said in front of the person who's hearing it. This story about Shimon, oh yeah, that's the truth. There's nothing to talk about that. You go and you basically either embellish it or you go ahead and you strengthen it. So there's no question that's going to be forbidden. Because it comes out that based on what you're doing now, you're actually accomplishing more than would have been accomplished just by the spread. The spread would be based on what the first person said. So if you spread what the first person, what he said is going to be spread, okay, we say that becomes well known. It's not going to be lashon hara if you repeat it. But if you now, one of those who are repeating it, are now adding to it, you're embellishing it, you're adding to it, which means now the person is going to become degraded more than just based on the original report in front of three, then of course it's going to be forbidden for you to do. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.